I'm Greg Chumley, President of Printelligence Consulting, and today I'm interviewing Dave Brewer, Chief Technology Officer at Image Options, about his experience using EFI's production analytics software, EFI IQ, with his display graphics presses. Image Options is a California-based surface imaging company that prints UV, dye-sub, echo solvent, and aqueous images on wood, metal, fabric, and almost anything else you can imagine. They are the first SGP-certified facility in California and have been printing and fabricating graphic solutions for retail, events, and environmental graphics market segments since 1999. Image Options has over 100 employees and produces over 10 million square feet of printed material every year. Dave, I know you have a wide variety of presses such as EFI ViewTech HSs, LXs, and FabReviews, as well as some Epsons. Do you use Fiery servers to drive them all?
As much as we can, we drive things with Fiery. It's the challenge becomes trying to train a multitude of operators and keep them up to speed on different rips. If I have a queue of operators and they all need to know how to do something, it's a lot easier standardizing. Pretty much everything in the operation runs on that, except for when Fiery hasn't built a driver for that piece of equipment, and I have to use a different rip.
Thanks. That makes sense. I understand that you've been using EFI IQ for a while now. What are you using it for?
We want to know what we do in any given day, and what did we print, how many files did we print, how much ink did we use, what's been going on the printer, uptime, maintenance time. So we could get a lot of that information, and we'd have to go look at the machines and someone walk around and manually track it and write it down, put it in a spreadsheet.
Great. How does EFI IQ help you do that?
One of the things where IQ can help, it gives us a snapshot. So every day I can kind of look at and say, okay, we printed 175 files today. We used 5.2 liters of ink. HS number 4 was the most productive. It's averaging X square feet per hour. I can look at shifts. I can look, hey, what's going on in the night shift? What's going on in the day shift? I can look at what files are getting printed. And one of the key things that I kind of look at is, why am I running everything at 1,000 DPI heavy smoothing? Okay, do I have a problem? What is causing this? Okay, and it gives me a snapshot relatively quickly. I can look at something in the day. Today I could go log on to IQ and say, what are we doing right now? What files are we printed? So that's how I've kind of used it.
You mentioned looking at shifts. How does that work?
You can set up time frames and just what's going on. So I can look at what's going on one of the machines. And day shift we did X, how many files printed. Night shift I did Y, how many file shifts printed during that shift. I can see if I'm being productive. Typically night shift is probably more productive than day shift, just because of less interruptions and they can be more focused. And then, there's expectations. If I have a certain amount of work that needs to get through the facility and I expect to get it done and it doesn't get done, I could look at IQ and go, what was the issue? Or, you can look and go, not much was getting printed between X time and Y time. I need to go find out.
Well, that has to be helpful. Do you use any other business analytics systems?
IQ is not a vacuum. So we use a number of tools. Obviously we're using PACE and we're doing data collection through PACE and all of our, so it's not a vacuum. So I know what operators are doing. So I have more than one way of seeing what's going on in the facility.
You're right. Production analytics is just one vector for managing a profitable printing business. It sounds like you get a lot of value out of EFI IQ. Does anyone else at Image Options use it?
I have the managers using it. I have the VP of operation and the production manager. That way they have visibility into what's going on.
Okay, let's talk about your production managers. How does EFI IQ help them?
They can look at just a quick snapshot and say, this machine was printing 18% of the time. This machine was printing 32% of the time. Or more like that. For them, it's about getting the work through.
So your production managers use EFI IQ to get work out the door. It seems to me that it could also be used to identify problem machines. Do you ever use it that way?
We can look at historically and see, hey, is this machine spending more time in maintenance? Absolutely.
What about using it to analyze ink utilization and cost?
Just looked at it like how much time are they purging, because I think we talked about that early on, is how much ink we could spend in purging. When you have an HS with 7 heads and 8 colors, and you purge for 5 seconds, and all of a sudden you can see how many liters of ink in a month you've just pushed through the machine, and you do the math, and in a year we were spending in the 20s of thousands of dollars in nothing but purging. So yeah.
Well, ink purges are important, but understanding the costs is too. Did you find any surprises when you analyzed how much ink you're using actually printing jobs?
There's been a couple times, when we're doing some of the billboards and stuff on a 5000R, it's eye-opening how much ink you actually are using on some of the, because we're printing. We do them in 8 color, partly because we don't want to switch back to fast 4. So it's like, wow, that was a lot of ink on that run.
Tell me, what other insights does EFI IQ offer you?
Just really helped us to look at the machine usage and how we're doing, and efficiency. It just gives us insight to workload and how we're doing, and for some of it for us is when do I need to buy more equipment?
Okay, now let's change gears. What's it like working with EFI?
We as a company have a great partnership with EFI. So we're very open. So if I do have a problem, we let them know, and they're, vice versa. If I'm doing something wrong, they'll let me know.
Now, as I understand it, you're not just reading meters and ink levels on machines. You're making business decisions based upon setups and data at a job level. How would you even do that without EFI IQ, and what would it cost?
I just think it's so much easier, right? You don't have to send someone around to the buoy and they have to click, and then they write it down somewhere, and then they go sit down at the computer and put it in a spreadsheet. It'd be minutes per file, and then it would be the tens of thousand files that you print in a year, and that's the savings.
Man, that could really add up. Tell me, how hard is EFI IQ to set up and use?
IQ is simple. Honestly, right? You got a few things you put in. You want ink price, you got to find printers, set those up, assign users. But basically, the data is flowing in. Yeah. A lot of the work is done by you guys to pull out the back end data.
One of the features I like about EFI IQ is Notify, which sends emails when presses aren't running. Do you use that?
I use the notifies, so I get those and I can see what's going on, which sometimes I will follow up on, especially if something's a long event. It's like, I do like that feature.
And how do you use those notifications?
I get the notifications. And typically it's going to be something on third shift when it's, late in the morning, and they're like, why is the machine sitting? Why hasn't it been initialized or something like that? What were they doing? But again, they could have been busy on another machine. And so but daytime is usually never an issue.
As nice as that is, I imagine that your inbox could get flooded if you were notified every time a press pauses. How do you define an idle machine?
I think I've got it set for like 15 minutes if something's stuck, something like that. I do like the email notifications. It just makes it simple. I don't have to chase anything down, so it pops in and, oh, okay, what's going on here?
Now, in the past, you've had to log onto a machine or a server to get information, which you couldn't do if a press was down. How does that compare to getting current and historical data anytime you need it from the cloud?
It's almost a given, right? The way things is in the world, it's expected that you get the data whenever you need it. I don't care if the machine's on or not. I want to know if the machine's been off. That's the notification. But if I want to look at historical data, yeah, absolutely.
And before we leave, do you have any final words about EFI IQ?
User-friendly tool giving me better business intelligence to make better decisions to run my business.
Well, I couldn't say it any better. Thank you for your time, Dave. You can learn more about EFI IQ on the web at fiery.efi.com/IQ.